This is week 6 on ethics. There are some notes and some scenarios and a copy of the plain language statement and a consent form. So good idea to have all of those downloaded so that we can go through them. And there's the reading, of course, from the reading pack on ethics. Now, I can't say how important ethics is to the way we design our studies. And so, as I say here in the notes, ethical thinking governs all aspects of the study, including your selection of participants, where you need to be clinically responsible. You need to be sure that your research study can be supported by people who are not going to be disadvantaged in a huge way, where being part of your research study is likely to be beneficial to them. So you're not going to be asking them to do things that are clinically irresponsible. Ethical thinking governs the way you recruit participants, and it's really important that you don't use coercion. So you can't just, rock up to someone and say, I'm doing a research study, it'd be really great if you could be part of it because I really need lots of people. So, can you really be part of my study? I mean, that's completely unethical. So much so that normally we have to have someone else to approach the participants to ask them to be part of the study. That might be a nurse on the ward, it could be a teacher, etc. But you don't actually recruit your own participants for your study. Ethical thinking governs the way you plan the treatment intervention, as I say, not putting the person under any sort of duress. We wouldn't do a study looking at stress in participants and deliberately put them in a stressful situation, for example. So we do not put them under duress of any kind. Ethical thinking governs the design of the study, and ideally we do that to make sure that they get something from the study. And we talked about last week whether that's a wait list control where they will get music therapy, they just have to wait for a few weeks, or if there's going to be a control condition that they get something. That might be another form of therapy, for example. Ethical thinking governs implementation. So at each step along the way, research studies don't work always according to plan, and so a situation might arise and you have to think that through ethically. So if someone's saying, well, they're not really sure whether they want to come to the rest of the sessions, you have to be very ethical about whether you say, well, you do have a right to withdraw from the study, or whether you say, what is it about the sessions that are causing you concern, and to see if that might be resolved so that the person might continue on. You have to be very careful again that you don't use coercion. Ethical thinking governs our choice of measures. We have to be aware of how long it takes people to fill out the questionnaires. In the big study that I'm involved in now, it takes about 45 minutes for them to fill out the questionnaires. There are about 99 questions altogether. And I think that's about as much as anyone could possibly bear. Sometimes you see studies where there are, 7 or 8 different measures. There's in excess of 100 and 150 questions. And so, again, you have to think, is it ethical to ask someone that many questions? Ethical thinking governs the way we analyse results, and we have to be very truthful where results have holes in them. Sometimes people miss questions, they don't answer all of the questions, and that's why you'll see in some research studies that there might be 20 people in the study, but for question number 1 there are only 17 replies, and you'll see that as n equals 17, and for the next question will be n equals 16, and all that means is that some people just skipped the question, they didn't answer it for some reason. Ethical thinking governs, of course, the way we report as well. So that when you get to the results of a study, you need to be very careful that you present them in a way that doesn't inflate the results. We'd all like to say that music therapy is fantastic and we got really fantastic results. But if they're not statistically significant, we have to say that. We might be able to say that there seems to be a trend, but you know, these results were not significant. We have to be quite truthful in all of that. All right. Now the next section governs the principles of ethics. This is about being careful to protect the people who are going to be the participants in your study. And basically, potential research participants have the right to clear information about the study in order to give informed consent. That's what that means. They need to be informed. Now, sometimes that means someone might have to sit down and explain the study to people. Sometimes we have to translate things so that people into their own language so that people will understand what's required. In the case of minors, children under the age of 18, we need consent from their parents. In the case of people who have impaired intellectual abilities, then we either need consent from members of their family or a guardian. The most important thing is that people need to know exactly what's going to be required of them in the study. So here we go. 1, participants have the right to exercise choice without fear of reprisal. So we invite them to be part of the study, and we have to say, if you do not choose to be part of the study, you'll still get music therapy or you'll still get other services. Participants have the right to change their minds and withdraw. And as I said before, sometimes we might talk to the person to see if it's, you know, something about what's happening in the session that they were uncomfortable about that could be clarified. But if they say, no, I don't want to come anymore, then they have the right to withdraw, and then we have to withdraw all of the information that they've provided so far. Participants need to know exactly what will be expected of them, including the risks and benefits, and all of that is in the plain language statement that we'll look at in a minute. Number 4 is incredibly important. Participants have a right to their identity being protected. So we have to explain how confidentiality and anonymity will be retained in the study so that, you know, for example, they have to sign a consent form, so their name is there, and then we might give them a code so that when they're filling out all this information about the most personal things of their life, that's in a code. But we have to keep the codes and the signed consent forms in separate places so that people can't link up that information. When you're writing up these research studies, you can consider the use of pseudonyms. I've said initials there, but I don't actually think initials is a good idea actually. So mostly pseudonyms to disguise the person's identity. Mostly what we say, however, is because our sample sizes are usually small, we'll often refer to them as participant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that. Participants have a right to know if there is even a chance that they might be recognised. And so if you're doing a study and there are, you know, 6 women with breast cancer in your study and they're receiving treatment from, you know, X hospital, it's possible that they might be identified. So you have to explain to them, in the case of small numbers, there is a chance that their details may be recognised by someone else. 5, participants have a right to know what you're going to do with the data that you've collected about them, about their personal aspects of their life. And basically that means that all of the questionnaires are kept in a locked cabinet and the only person who has access is the researcher. You need to tell them that the data will be kept for a period of 5 years. That's a legal requirement, that it's kept for 5 years beyond the end of publication. And that's just in case anyone at any point questions what you've done in your research study, and you need to be able to have anyone auditing your study to be able to look at the raw data. And finally, participants have a right to know whether research findings will be published and whether they will be presented at conferences or in teaching. So researchers must be vigilant about no coercion to participant and no coercion to participate in the study and no coercion to remain in the study. And be vigilant with regard to vulnerable people. So patients in hospitals who are in pain, we know, are more inclined to agree to be part of the study because they somehow feel that they'll do anything if people will just take the pain away. People who have severe mental illness definitely need a consent form signed by a witness, and the witness needs to say that they are sure that the person has understood what's being required of them. People with reduced intellectual capacity need consent forms from family members or guardians, as I said before, and people with reduced cognitive awareness, like people who have dementia. What's interesting there is that we have to ask, it's normally their children, because the person with dementia is likely to be their mother or father. So when we go to the family, typically recruitment for dementia studies is actually really, really hard. And often the sons or daughters of the person will say, no, I don't want my parent to be in a research study, you're meant to be looking after them, you know. So they often don't give permission. So these people need a witness or a parent, guardian or family member to sign on their behalf. And so I've given you a couple of scenarios there that you might like to look at. And then I just want to take you through the plain language statement to show you the plain language that we have to use to explain the project. So this PLS is from my study. First of all, it gives you the details about the researchers and how people can contact us. There are our phone numbers. And I say the purpose of the study is to see if 2 different types of group sessions are helpful to you in your health. If you choose to participate, you'll attend either a weekly group music therapy session or a discussion-based group over 12 weeks. That is, 12 sessions altogether, making that really clear. It's been approved. Under group music therapy, this is you can choose songs that you like to sing. That's a plain language of way of saying familiar and preferred songs, which is music therapy talk. So songs that you like to sing, and you'll be involved in creating new songs, writing the words and contributing to the musical composition. At the end of the project, the original songs will be recorded in a studio and a CD will be made of the songs, and you can keep a copy of the CD. And in the discussion-based groups, there'll be focus on current events, da-da-da-da-da. Now, before the first session of either intervention, you'll be asked to fill out some forms that have questions about your health. Filling out the forms will take 45 minutes. At the end of the project, that is after 12 weeks, you'll be asked to fill out the same forms again. And 6 months after the end of the project, you will be asked to fill the forms one more time. You'll be paid $10 on the day the forms are filled out. No, the forms are only seen by the researchers and a research assistant. No other person has access. They'll be stored securely, and at the end of the time the forms are shredded. The researchers will also be interested to hear how you felt about the project and whether it was any value. We'll talk to you in a group, record the conversation so that we can accurately transcribe what you say. Focus groups will take an hour. The recordings will be stored a period of 5 years, and at the end of that time they'll be shredded. They'll be wiped. Your participation is voluntary. If you choose not to participate, your care will not be affected. You can still attend other programs. It's hoped your involvement in the project will be helpful, but there's no guarantee that you will benefit from participating. We have to say that. And you don't have to be involved in the research project if you don't want to. There are no risks that we can see, but you're free to withdraw. The results will be presented at academic conferences, in teaching university students and for publications. And then the next paragraph gives information about someone completely outside of the research study that they can speak to if they want. And then the consent form is a legal